Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and welcome back to another session on my Declassified Caribbean channel. And today's topic is going to be reparations without accountability, the complicity of Caribbean and African leaders. And we're here to ask the hard questions. We're not here to cast blame, and we are not here to deny a history of oppression of people of color, what we call people of African descent, or African peoples, as it were. What we're here to do is to look at slavery in a much broader perspective, because oftentimes when we talk about slavery, we tend to look back at the transatlantic slave trade. We look back at also the end of slavery, the proclamation of emancipation in the Caribbean, for example, in 1838, and we think that that was the end of slavery, right? And we have forms of slavery, other forms of slavery that we're suffering with right now that we need to deal with, we need to attack, and we need to ensure that we are honest in our criticisms and our analyses, which in many cases we are not. Because the history that we're teaching in the world now is not a critical approach. It's one which we say everything is the oppressor and the oppressed, and the one somebody's victim, and we do not look at the full story. So for generations, the debate over reparations for slavery and colonialism has focused on the responsibility of former colonial powers and the lasting economic and social impacts of these systems. However, another difficult question remains: what role did African and Caribbean leaders, elites, and institutions play in the systems of exploitation that shaped our history? From African rulers who participated in the slave trade to Caribbean political and economic elites who operated within colonial structures, the story is complex. A serious conversation about justice requires examining not only external powers, but also the internal actors who benefited, cooperated, resisted, or failed to challenge these systems. So this afternoon, we ask a challenging question: can there be a meaningful reparations without accountability from all of those who played a role in the historical injustice of slavery and colonialism? This is not about shifting blame or denying the responsibility of colonial powers. It is about confronting the full history, acknowledging uncomfortable truths, and asking what genuine justice should we look for today in a world that is so dishonest and filled with a lot of lies and deception. So we are going to begin asking those very important questions. Now, I open up with this very important article that should captivate your attention. What is modern slavery? The question is being asked. And you might think that slavery is a thing of the past, but right now, almost 50 million people are trapped in slavery worldwide. How many? 50 million. It's a problem that affects every country on earth, including yours. So including the United States, every country of the world has slaves, right? Modern day slaves. In many ways, slavery may look different from the slavery of the transatlantic slave trade, but modern slavery as a term encompasses many forms of slavery, including human trafficking and people being born into slavery. There are hundreds of definitions of modern slavery. All of these include aspects of control, involuntary actions, and exploitation. And Anti-Slavery International, or at Anti-Slavery International, they're saying here, we define modern day slavery as when an individual is exploited by others for personal or commercial gain. So whether they're tricked, coerced, or forced, they lose their freedom. This includes, but is not limited to, human trafficking, which we know people have been talking about, including in the United States at the southern border there. We have that as hundreds of thousands of victims of human trafficking right in the United States. Our mission is to stop slavery to secure freedom for everyone, everywhere, and always. Modern slavery is all around us, often hidden in plain sight. People can become enslaved, making our clothes, as we see in Haiti. They have a lot of these factories in Haiti. We call them sweatshops. in which people work for little and nothing. And that is a form of modern day slavery, picking our crops, working in factories, or working in house as cooks, cleaners, or nannies. Victims of modern slavery might face violence or threats, be forced into inescapable debt, or have their passport taken away and face being threatened with deportation. And that is happening right now in the United States. We heard while they're talking about the deportation of immigrants in the United States, Trump has said that he has, immigrants, right, that also work for him. Do you think he's going to be fair to them? I am not that sure about that. According to the latest global estimates of modern slavery, that's 2022 from Walk Free, the International Labor Organization, and the International Organization for Migration, 49.6 million people live in modern slavery, in forced labor and forced marriage. Roughly a quarter of all victims of modern slavery are children. 22 million people are in forced marriages. 2 out of 5 of these people were children. Children, can you imagine, in forced marriages? Of the 27.6 million people trapped in forced labor, 17.3 million are in forced labor exploitation in the private economy. 6.3 million are in commercial sexual exploitation, and nearly 4 million are in forced labor imposed by state authorities. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the conditions that led to modern slavery. Migrant workers are particularly vulnerable to forced labor. And we saw that even during COVID, and when many Haitians went to the United States, and under Biden, the Democratic Party, that they were beaten with whips at the border. We saw that. It was nothing of my doing, right? And I'm not making up these stories. These stories were there for you to hear and to listen to. Now, we're going to look at some interesting clippings here about slavery and how slavery is not of yesteryear, but it continues even in our so-called postmodern times, right? Because we know we're not living in modern times. We're living in postmodern times where we think we're free and we're living in democratic society. So let's begin with some of the videos. Now, let us look at this here, this video, history told from an oppressor perspective. But is that the end of
children learn at school and online? Ask any young person what history they learned at school, and they'll tell you Hitler. Ask them what else? Slavery. Ask them what else? American civil rights. In fact, what little they know of history will be all about black and brown people fighting for equality against the white man. Women fighting men for the vote. Gay and trans people fighting for various rights. Our young people have been taught that history is simply one long story about various groups struggling under the oppressive dead white man. Out with Dickens, Shakespeare, Kipling, and Wordsworth. We must decolonize. History is taught through an oppressor lens. The triangular slave trade, white men held the power. What about Britain ending the slave trade? More than a quick mention, if at all? No. What of the Arab slave trade that lasted 3 times as long as the triangular slave trade? No. Okay, so GCSE history in Britain is often taught as migration through time. So the idea that Britain has always been a land of immigrants is embedded in our children's heads. Most schools would prefer to concentrate learning about the tiny number of black people who existed in Tudor England over a thorough analysis of England's break from Rome. Medieval history becomes her story and is told through the eyes of Eleanor of Aquitaine, because after all, she was a woman. Not to mention weeks on King Mansa Musa of Mali, because he was a black Muslim. His bearing on British institutions, laws, and faith is non-existent. And the fact that he is said to have been the richest man in history, thanks in part to his massive slave-owning society, is a detail somehow that teachers rarely ever teach. But it isn't just our schools. It's our general culture, too. Take your kids to a museum or an art gallery in any Western country, and you'll find the same narrative. As an example, When learning about aviation in London's Science Museum and the extraordinary feat that is man making massive machines move in the sky, a write-up on the wall explains that women and black people were historically barred from aviation schools and the military. Similarly, James Watt, the man who invented the steam engine and is considered the founder of the Industrial Revolution, has a write-up on the wall explaining that his early career involved slave trafficking with a bonus analysis of the whole of Britain's complicity in the slave trade. They flatten the entire human story and all of its complexities into the narrative of oppressor and oppressed, leaving young people unable to see the world in any other terms.
Yeah, so this is what is happening in our school system, that we are often indoctrinated look at history from a broad perspective in which we're looking at human nature and power, the powerful that control the populations of the world. So many times when we talk about slavery, we look at color, particularly during the transatlantic slave trade. So we look at whites versus blacks, but we don't look at the fact that we also had black merchants, right, who were actually slave owners. And we're going to look at some of the modern day slavery that is happening right now under our noses, and people are not talking about it, but yet we're talking about what? Reparations. Now, reparations for whom? In Africa, there is still slavery. So let us look at what is happening in Libya, for example, and begin to have
African
that
men
discussion.
being auctioned in Libya for as little as $400. The world was shocked. The UN condemned it. Protests erupted across Africa. Then the cameras left, and the auctions continued. A 2025 academic study published in Frontiers in Political Science calls it the new slave trade in Libya. Not a metaphor. A documented system where migrants are bought and sold between militias, smugglers, and detention operators. Here is how it works. Sub-Saharan Africans fleeing poverty and conflict head north toward Europe. They enter Libya. They are captured by armed groups, detained in militia-run facilities, ransomed to their families, sold when no money comes. Women and girls face sexual slavery. Men face forced labor. Children disappear into the system entirely. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights confirmed in 2025 that these practices amount to crimes against humanity. And here is the part that makes this a global scandal. European Union funding supports the Libyan and Tunisian border forces managing these same migration routes. A recent investigation found migrants sold to Libyan gangs for as little as $12, with EU-backed forces implicated in the chain. The trans-Saharan trade route once moved gold and salt. Today, it moves people. Which source do you trust more? The UN reports or the governments funding the border forces? Comment below. Follow for more history and truth they don't want you to connect.
Right. So we're seeing where in Libya at the moment, and we know why that is happening too. We know that it is happening in Libya because the United States President Barack Obama, who was a black president, the first black president according to the history books, that was president of the United States, went and he deposed the government of Libya's president, the former president. What's his name again? Forgot his name. Why is it? Yeah, but he was after he was deposed by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. We know that Libya has been open to slavery, and all forms of slavery are right now in Libya at the moment as we speak. So if we're going to talk about emancipation, if we're going to talk about reparations, then the slaves in Libya also merit that. And why don't we stop it for the most part? Why don't we highlight it? Why aren't we talking about what is happening in Libya and trying to free those slaves first before we talk about reparations? Because are we going to get reparations according to what they're suggesting while many of us are still enslaved? That is some of the questions that we have to ask ourselves, and we must be prepared to answer. Many of us are not willing to answer it because we have this one narrow perspective of what slavery entails. Now, we also have slavery in Mauritania, and we are going to look at that and see that this is nothing, that is of yesteryear, that it's happening right now as we speak.
Wrong. There are still people in Mauritania today who are owned by other people, born into slavery, never paid a wage, never allowed to leave. And
Gaddafi,
that's
right?
not even the wildest part. Stick around, I'll explain. In Mauritania, slavery is passed down through generations, especially among the Haratin, a black community descendant from slave. They grow up believing they were born to serve, and society agrees. It's not chains and whips anymore, it's mental bondage. They call it hereditary slavery, and it still affects tens of thousands. In 2025, a new court was finally created to deal with slavery and human trafficking. It sounds like progress, right? But here's the catch. Mauritania's government denies slavery exists. Activists who speak up, they're arrested, tortured, some just disappear. People like Biram Da Abeid, Fatima Mbayi, and Mokhtar Tayeb have been risking their lives to fight this. In some cases, it's taken 10 years to get a single conviction. Meanwhile, entire families are still living and dying in servitude, and the rest of the world silent. Because Mauritania isn't trending, because slavery isn't supposed to exist anymore, but it does. So here's my question for you. Why do you think that this isn't taught in schools or shown on the news? This is the Africa you're not shown, but I'm here to show you.
Now, why are Miss Mia Motley and why is Sir Hilary Beckles not speaking about this at the United Nations? Why are they not, screaming that we do have slavery in Africa? Because one of the things that we have this black population now who are crazy over Africa. Africa is a land of redemption, yet still Africa is still enslaved. Africa is still a continent of enslavement, enslaving our black brothers and sisters, but we are not concerned about that. We are concerned about ourselves, and we are concerned about the monies that are available, that we might be getting, that might be coming our way. That's the only thing we're concerned, but we are not concerned that people are suffering slavery, okay, in Africa and in other parts of the world. Now, how can we accept that if we were to get reparations and not also be clamoring for freedom for our other African brothers and sisters? Is that not selfishness? Is that not evil just as the white man is evil? Right? We are not really sounding the alarm, are we? Or are we just confident that we are free according to what we think? But we are not to. Okay? And I'm going to bring you what is happening with China here. And I see Dr. Umar Johnson speaking quite eloquently
All
about
these
what is happening in the
rumblings
Caribbean
about the
and with the
Chinese.
Chinese investments.
And I've been to Jamaica before and I've seen the Chinese. But in studying what they have done since my last visit, I was astounded and appalled to find out that they had made so much inroads into controlling and influencing the infrastructure of the Jamaican people. The Chinese built a road from Kingston, one side of the island, to the other side of the island. And in exchange for the roads that they built, the Jamaican government, unless this has changed since then, gave the Chinese total control over the toll money that will be made by people using the Northwest or East-West Highway. Why would you give a foreign power complete monetary control of the tolls on this road that half of Jamaica gonna be using? You're talking millions of dollars of revenue you're giving to the yellow man just because he built the road. In addition to that, the Chinese are building it's probably done by now. They were building at that time 2 schools, and they were bringing Chinese educators over to help the Jamaican people educate black children. They built the Children's Hospital, which is supposed to be largely staffed with Chinese. They also gave the Chinese total control of all tourism on both sides of that highway that goes from one side of the island to the other. I was also told that they gave the Chinese the right to drill in natural rainforests in the Jamaican on the Jamaican territory for Chinese exploitation. They'd given them tax abatements, and they also purchased If I'm not mistaken, the port, the main port of Jamaica.
All right, they own the port.
Is owned by the Chinese. Exactly. If another race owns your port, that means they control what's coming in. They control what's going out. What about the drugs? What about the guns? What about the COVID? You don't know what them people bringing in. And you mean to tell me that the Chinese care so much about Jamaican people that they're not going to educate our kids and take care of their health? Chinese don't care about black folks. Go to China. Go to China and see how they treat black people in China. So to me, what I think this is the government of Jamaica, like so many African governments, so many other Caribbean governments have done. They've gotten in bed financially with the Chinese. The Chinese have studied the way the white man has practiced neocolonialism throughout Africa. And the Chinese has learned that these black leaders don't really care about their people. They're all about their pocket. So I'm going to do what the white man did, but I'm going to do it one time better. I'm going to offer them double the money. You let me take over this land right here. I'll get the white man offering you $1 million. I'm offering you $3 million. And I'm going to build you a retirement home. And I'm going to pay for all your kids to go to college in China. You follow what I'm saying? And I'm going to give you a private military. So the Chinese have basically become neocolonialists 2.0. They're outdoing the Europeans. You follow me? And they're giving Caribbean and African leaders offers that they can't refuse. And
so this is what is happening in the Caribbean, right? That the Chinese, we have now swapped one colonial master for another. And that is what Black people are known for doing. We do not know how to help ourselves. We have not yet become self-reliant, as Marcus Garvey was encouraging us to do. What we want to do is to sit down and wait for a savior. The same thing is happening in Burkina Faso too, with the likes of, Traoré, that you are also adoring, right? He is swapping and not one European colonial master for another one, and the Chinese are also involved along with the Russians. And we think that this is going to build us and that we are going to liberate ourselves from people who are there not to give us, not to like us, but to benefit from our idiocy. Right? Because they understand that our elites in the Caribbean are not working on our behalf. They know the politicians don't like us, right? They don't like the population. And they want to actually extract as much wealth and are working, pleasure in a great way, right? Happily to fill the pockets of these global elites. Yet our people are so asleep that I don't know what is going to happen to us. Just like in Africa, we are about to be enslaved right here in the Caribbean region. But I want to show you this video that was done, a very interesting video, but one that is not comprehensive, but is quite good, a discussion about what is happening in the Caribbean with this reparations movement, because it's a movement. It's not just an association of professors and NGPs or whoever they are. This is actually a movement that that is in full swing. Let me see if I can share this with you with some people from Jamaica who are having a very interesting and live discussion on what this reparations is all about. And mind you, some of what he says are true, but a lot also is missing in the discussion that we're having here in the Caribbean region. A lot. And he's also bringing out that our academics are too narrow-minded and are not and also very contradictory, right? And hypocrites, as it were. Let's watch what he's saying. And right now, it's a very healthy discussion that they're having. Can you hear?
The government under Barry Shevans came on board with the reparations.
Are you hearing, guys? Tell me if you're hearing the conversation, because I'm not sure.
Started a formal organization to seek reparations. Mm-hmm. So my time goes back 7 years before the Jamaican state took on reparations. And I was sent to court in 2002 by Rastafari.
Can you hear?
Rastafarians.
Can you hear?
I was visiting on our Jubilee.
Okay.
She came here and we said we want to embarrass her. We want to serve her papers for reparation. We're not celebrating your thing. We want reparation. And when we went to court, the Jamaican judge, who is, in the Jamaica, the judge the judiciary is part of the colonialist thing. Every morning we go to court, we say, God save the king. And we bow. Them, not I. I don't bow. So he said, why are you coming here? This is the Queen's court. You can't come here against the Queen to get reparations. All right. So in short, the repair campaign is how old?
So we've been around since 2022.
Right. Okay. So they are four-year babies. We've been here. Rastafari is before me because they have been asking for repatriation.
Yes.
And that's before, when I was a baby, Rastafari start reparation movement in Jamaica.
From the days of Walter Rodney.
Straight up, before that too. Walter Rodney, you got it. So I just want context that you have foundation reparation movement and you have 4-year-old repair matters.
What I really want to do with this conversation is to shed light to the average Jamaican.
That's good.
Not only the history of both movements,
that's right,
but why it's important,
that's right,
why this is necessary, and going forward, what it can be done to alleviate some of the issues that still plague us from the days of slavery.
All right. I want you to be free to stop me if I'm going on. I'm emotional about the issue. If I'm going off key, you can just stop me, right? Good.
So again, just as how you outlined, you've been starting, you personally have been a part of this fight from 2002.
Before that, but I went to court.
Okay, so can you give us the full historical background, not just of your participation,
definitely not,
but the Jamaican,
yes, my
or
brother,
as much as you can.
That's right. So you ready? You're rolling. The cameras are on. Right. Before slavery was abolished in 1838 in Jamaica, the people were seeking freedom, and they were also seeking compensation. Sam Sharp, in 1831, led a rebellion that they said, we're not working no more. We want money. So he organized a strike.
The Christmas Rebellion.
It was a strike, but after a while, it got out of hand, or into our hands as Africans, and we took it on. So I would say the reparation movement is centuries old. It is a resistant movement. And the reason I say that is because the Eurocentric way to look at it is that we were freed by Wilberforce, not by us our limbs being severed when we tried to run from the plantation. So that the reparation movement is the African Jamaican movement. It doesn't belong to anyone else. It's here. So if you ask me, the formal reparation movement now started, in my view, and my reading of history, with Rastafari, Leonard Howard, and they said, you brought us from Africa here, Rastafari. We want you to pay our passage back to Africa. So the Back to Africa movement is Rastafari. The CARICOM Council has put it as one of the 10-point plans, repatriation. So I don't want to take from it that it is an indigenous movement, not started by intellectuals, but by Rastafari. And I don't want anyone to overtake that fact in Jamaica.
And they inherited the struggle from the days of the rebellion.
That's correct. So here we go now. Come 2002, that queen in England came here to celebrate her silver jubilee. She was on the throne for 50 years. And she thought she could come here and have an easy time. Rastafari instructed me, along with Rastafarian Michael Lawn, an attorney at law. We filed an action in the Supreme Court for reparation for the fact that her bloodline raped her grandmothers and our mothers and our ancestors, and that we have not been paid. And we filed an action in the court 2002. That's 24 years ago, bro. Before any reparation movement started in Jamaica in any formal way by intellectuals who have now come on board. And when we went to court, an interesting thing happened. The judge, I asked him before I started to argue, do you belong to any of the lodges of England? Because, you know, the lodges are connected to the monarchy and they also respect the queen and they have rights. He asked me, why are you asking me that? Because I said, you should excuse yourself from sitting on reparation for African Jamaicans if you bow to the Queen of England. And he said he's not answering that. So the case went on. He eventually threw out the case that the Rastafarians were seeking. I filed an affidavit in the court myself, although I'm the attorney, to say, listen, I don't know my name. I've been given the name of the enslaver. Samuels is my name. It's given to me by my oppressor, and I don't know my name. I have to go to court and bow and say, God save the Queen every day. In those days, the Queen was still alive. And it hurts me. I am mentally affected
Mm-hmm.
by colonialism and slavery. And after we argued, we tried to put all the best evidence before them. The case was thrown out by the Jamaican judge. And the Attorney General, in the form of the Solicitor General, came and opposed the application. It's heart-rending to sit in a courtroom where my brother, a fellow African Jamaican, is protecting the British monarchy in his arguments. So that's very painful for me. We lost that case. And after that, we decided that we would have appealed. We didn't really carry through with the appeal. I was instructed by Michael Lawn, an attorney at law. He had to travel at the time, and I had the privilege to argue the first case in Jamaica for reparations. So jump forward now. We're going to the Privy Council 24 years later, and I'm supposed to be part of that team to argue. What are we going to the Privy Council for? We're going to the Privy Council to argue that the mass kidnapping and transportation of Africans and bringing them to Jamaica is contrary to the principles of British law, because you can't enslave people in Britain at any time, but you can enslave them down here. There's a case called the Somerset case, which was tried in England. And in that case, they argued that slavery was not permitted in England, but they permitted slavery down here. Because you see, what has happened to Eurocentric thinking is that they say that apartheid was legal once, so it's fine. Slavery was legal once, so there's nothing that falls on. And segregation in the United States was legal until Brown versus you know what in 1954. So the argument against reparation by the British government is to say slavery in Jamaica was legal, so we can't compensate something that is legal. You know, we did nothing wrong. And so the contradiction is in one part of the British Empire, which is in England, slavery is illegal, but yet in another part it is not. So the first, we're bringing three things to the Privy Council: that your own laws makes slavery contrary to your principles of the common law. The second layer is that what you did to us is a crime against humanity. Now, the reason we want the crime against humanity to be decided on by the Privy Council judges is because when you have a crime against humanity, there is no statute of limitation. I can't sue you after 6 years. I have to come before 6 years. One of the things they use against us is that slavery was abolished 188 years ago. Come the 1st of August, we have been freed, by the way, for 188 years. We have been in slavery for over 400 years. So we don't even gone halfway yet into freedom. But what they're saying is that we, down here, it's not a crime. If we get it to be a crime against humanity, then we get rid of the statute of limitation, that's 6 years before you can bring an action. And lastly, we are saying, if the Privy Council finds that it breached principles of common law and decency and civility, and it is a crime against humanity, well, what responsibility the British government now has for us to be compensated? And we're going to see what answers they're going to give. Because
and just to be clear, this case is specific to the Jamaican context. So it's not CARICOM-wide, but you do have the CARICOM Reparations Commission, and you have the National Reparations Committees, which BERS sits on the Jamaican one. So not all countries are taking this action. But just going back to what you said about for the layman, why are we doing this? All this time has passed. And it's because even though enslavement may have passed, the systems that were put in place at the time, they continue to impact the lives that we live here in Jamaica, that people live in Barbados, people live in Guyana. And we're recognizing that as we try to move forward in our development trajectory as countries, we have to recognize that there are still systems that are keeping us back. So it's like trying to move forward with one leg and one arm tied. We're not starting on equal footing. And so that's why instead of reparations, you hear people speaking about reparatory justice. It's a movement for justice. It's not charity. It's not aid. It's about giving us a fair chance to actually build the lives that will create giving us a fair chance to create lives that will be healthy and prosperous for citizens of the Caribbean.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the British government was paying compensation to the former owners of slaves until 2015. Is that correct?
Right.
Can
so
I speak to that?
Please, kind of.
So if you look at the laws that abolish slavery, it's not a law for the abolition of slavery. It's a compensation law. And at the bottom of it, you say, we'll be free. So the first things those wretches did was to agree to 1834, firstly.
Mm-hmm.
Then they said, listen, the 20 million pounds for us to stop this profitable business in 1834 is not enough. They went back to the parliament and debated and asked for 4 more years. Bro, my great grandfather, Edward Samuels, was a boy during that time on a plantation in Negril. They worked him so bad, he caught what Jamaican call bosun. My great grandfather, the woman who nursed him, I spoke to her, he had bosun. They stretched us out for those 4 years. And it has been quantified that that further 4 years is worth 27 million pounds. They got more
At the time.
At
the time. So they got a total of 47 million pounds. The 20 million pounds is paid cash to them. But the add-on of 4 more years in Jamaica, because not everyone went to 1830. That has been calculated toward 27 million pounds. That's Professor Beckles, who has calculated that and has put out. So, bro, they got 47 million pounds. The 20 million pounds was a huge fraction of the budget for the year in England at that time. Now, my brother went to England, he's older than me, in 1961. So he paid taxes. It turns out that he was paying taxes to help to pay those who enslaved Edward, our great-grandfather. So it is not just that the planters were compensated, it's just that we helped those who went, the Windrush generation.
Who were enslaved.
Yes. Yeah. The people who went to England and worked and fought 2 world wars in their tribal war in Europe. Freedom. So my brother helped to pay the planters because the money was finished being paid. That's what, 11 years ago?
In 2015.
2015.
And that's just one of the many facts that the average person doesn't know. And that's why public education is such an important part of the work that we do. For us at the Repair Campaign, as Bert noted, we have been around for about 4 years, and our work goes around up 3 pillars. So one of the things that we do primarily, as Bert mentioned,
all right, I think we can stop it there for a while, but we want to look at some of the things that they're talking about, right, in this video. And one of the things that he has mentioned, Bert Samuels has mentioned, is the fact that our leaders are hypocritical, right? Our leaders are hypocritical, and they will have names like Sir Hilary Beckles, as he suggested also in Jamaica. The people there at the courts, they have to bow to the king, right, to King Charles. Andrew Holness is KC, and he's saying every king's council, they have to make statements to the effect that they will do everything to uphold the name of the. What are we talking about when we're talking about the countries leading us, right? So the fact of the needs to be unmasked. And is this really about reparations, or is it about getting money to put in the pockets of the elites and the rich? I think it's the latter, because there are just too many contradictions that need to be unraveled, that need to be unmasked. Now, as we move on, we are going to look at some of the fact that slavery, Africans participated in slavery, right? So we have in the Barbary corsairs were Muslim profiteers, right, or privateers, and they're naval raiders and slave traders based mainly in North African coastal states known as the Barbary states, Algiers, and we have Tunis, Tripoli, and later Morocco, roughly modern Algeria. We have Tunisia, Libya, and Morocco. Many of these people involved were, Berbers and Arabs, Ottoman, Turkish, and European converts to Islam. And so it was not a single ethnic group. From roughly the 16th to the 19th centuries, Barbary corsairs conducted raids in the Mediterranean and Atlantic ocean. So the fact of the matter is that these people were also involved in slavery. They captured Europeans from coastal areas and ships, including sailors, fishermen, and villagers from countries such as Spain, Italy, France, Britain, Ireland, and Portugal. They also captured people from other regions, including some Black Africans. though the scale and nature differed from the Atlantic slave trade. Captives were taken to North Africa and sometimes sold into slavery or held for ransom. They also captured American sailors and civilians. The most famous example is a capture of American ship and sailors in the late 17th century, in the late 1700s, or which would be 18th century, which contributed to the first Barbary War. It is 1801 to 1805 between the United States and Tripoli. It is historically accurate that North African corsairs enslaved some Europeans and Americans. However, historians distinguish this from the transatlantic slave trade, which was a different system in scale, organization, and purpose. The Atlantic system involved the forced transportation of millions of Africans to plantation colonies in the Americas, largely given by the European colonial economies. A balanced discussion of slavery in history includes many systems. You have the European Atlantic slavery, African participation in slave trading networks, Ottoman and North African slave systems, indigenous and Asian forms of slavery. Because if we noticed also, if you study history, indigenous peoples in the Americas, for example, North America, had black slaves. A broad discussion of reparations can consider several dimensions: the Atlantic slave trade, European empires, merchants, shipping companies, plantation economies, colonial governments, and some African that's politicians, authorities, had roles in the system that transported millions of Africans to the Americas. Now, there was African participation and accountability. Some African rulers, elites, and traders captured or sold enslaved people, often through warfare, raids, and existing systems of bondage. A complete historical discussion can examine those roles while also recognizing that many African communities were victims of the trade. We also have the North African and Ottoman era slavery. The Barbary corsair system and other slave systems in the Mediterranean and the Middle East involved the capture and enslavement of Europeans, Africans, and others. These histories are part of the broader global story of slavery. Colonialism and extraction, reparations debates also include questions about seizure, resource extraction, forced labor, colonial taxation, and the long-term economic effects of empire. And we've spoken about this with regard to the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and all of these multilateral institutions that have stolen from the Caribbean, and we are not holding them accountable. And also, Bert Samuels did point out that the IMF needs to forgive us because we don't owe them anything. They have stolen our wealth. We don't owe the IMF nor the World Bank any money. But our leaders and the people who are leading the reparatory justice movement, they are not challenging the IMF. Okay? Now, we also have the post-emancipation systems. In the Americas and Caribbean, discussions frequently address what happened after abolition, such as limited compensation for formerly enslaved people, continued discrimination, unequal access to land and wealth, and colonial structures that persisted. Even right now in Jamaica, we have what you call colonial, the crown lands, right? The lands in Jamaica are largely owned by the British, right? By the colonial lords or former slave masters. So we are not free as we think we are. And our black leaders, they participate right now in modern day slavery by making you economic peons and slaves of the society, of the system. A broad approach does not mean treating every actor as equally responsible. Historians, historical responsibility depends on factors such as scale, power, decision making, authority, economic benefit, and the systems created and maintained. A serious debate about justice and accountability benefits from examining uncomfortable parts of of history from all sides. And we want to show you something here about Africans also participating in slavery. And that is something that we have not really explored a lot because we're so emotional as Black people and we are largely miseducated. But the fact of the matter is that we believe what we want to hear at our own what? Peril. Because we're going to find out that this reparatory justice is enslavement and not to free you. All right, so let me just get this on my screen and share it with you right now as we go there. African participation in modern day and also in historical slavery as we know it. Let me put that on the screen and share that with you. Okay. We don't want to hear the truth in the Caribbean, and that is why we are going to be on the plantation very soon. It's not there. Is it there yet? It's not there. Okay. Okay, let me see if I can get it. It should be there now, is it? Okay, I might have to skip that. Okay, I might have to skip this one because it's taking me too much time, wasting my time. All right, so I will skip that one and go to something else. So let me skip that one and go to something else so that we can move the program along. Don't have time to waste. Okay, so let me get that thing going, up and running. And we're going to look at another African relying on him. Look at what this president is saying, and he's from Uganda, and he has this to say about Africans and their dependence on a slave master.
I like it because it wakes up Africans. It wakes up Africans. It's a shame that the whole of the African countries is just asleep, waiting to be saved by others. If they don't save us, we shall die, like happened with the slave trade. How can this be? Slave trade went on here for 400 years. These idiot chiefs were here just putting on monkey skins and so on, looking like cows. So therefore, although this is bad, but me, there is a good thing in it, to wake up the Africans. Africans are a disgrace to ourselves. Why do you have to depend on the outside for everything? Life, you depend on the outside. Why?
Okay, so that is what is happening, that we are not a people who like to think independently and like to act and become self-reliant. We always have to depend. Land Champion is there screaming out about, enslavement when his mind is enslaved because he thinks that Black people are going to actually liberate the world and liberate himself. And he is mentally enslaved, not realizing that Black people are more enslaved now than they were during the transatlantic slave trade. We are more enslaved now. Right? Somebody has to take care of us, and something is wrong with that sort of ideal. Let me see if I can put this on the screen that I was trying to get to you before. Hopefully it will come this time. Yeah, so let's try to get it on the screen and see what happens here. All right. So is it there? Okay, good. So let us put up the volume. Oh, it's not the volume. Okay, there's no volume.
Enslaved Europeans and even Americans too. It's the side of the story history barely whispers about. From the 1500s to the 1800s, North African pirates, known as Barbary pirates, captured sailors and travelers from Europe
All right.
and the US.
Let me see if my thing is something is wrong with my thing here.
They sold them into slavery in places.
Let me see if I could go on to another thing here and see if I could get this.
Black people. I hear some of you say that for centuries, Africans enslaved Europeans and even Americans too. It's the side of the story history barely whispers about. From the 1500s to the 1800s, North African pirates, known as Barbary pirates, captured sailors and travelers from Europe and the US. They sold them into slavery in places like Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli. Were into Britain, with the roles reversed. So remember, slavery was and the whole story. The human people. I some of you.
Okay, I hopefully I'm back. Okay, all right. So I'm back. Okay, so good. So that is what she suggested that we cannot, and in Black people history, we just look at one side of the story and we don't examine all of what is happening with the whole matter of slavery. And slavery is much more complex than we can discuss in this afternoon's program. So let us look at something else, since we are coming down to the end of the program. Let us look at something else in terms of where we are in the stream of things. I found this online, and it captivated me in terms of the fact that there is a site that Jamaica has set up saying that that foreigners should contribute to Jamaica's building, but is not owned by Jamaicans. And that is what this is the whole site.
SupportJamaica.gov
is not owned by Jamaica.
Website is not owned or managed by the government. The SupportJamaica.gov website, there was a rush way for donate with money to. First of all, they wanted us to donate our money to the government. And people did. The traffic light IT company that is controlling all of our various government networks and institutions and RARE and whatnot and etc. Yeah, we need to look into them.
Right. So what it suggests to us is that nothing that is there in all of these Caribbean countries is owned by us. So all this NARA and all of this building roads and building infrastructure will not be owned by us at all. And today I was reading also an article in which Bill Gates is telling us that there's going to be severe water shortages very shortly, right? And when he's telling us that is because they're creating it. And the data centers are going to create, that I spoke about some weeks ago, is going to create this water shortage. Diseases are going to happen, and they're going to require you to take more vaccines. Stay tuned for a video I have on that, because that is something that we have to be concerned about. So if we think that we are free living in this region at the moment and that we are not slaves, we've got to rethink our position. I think that it's time for us now to gather our facts, to gather information, remove emotionalism and this talk about African liberation, because it's not going to happen under this current circumstances. All of what we're seeing is just, deception, right? Deception from academics, deception from your politicians, deception from your economists, deception from even some of your, or most of your Pan-Africanists. Complete deception. And when you shall have awakened, you're going to find yourself in a world in which you can't trust anyone. Okay? So you have to wake up now and smell the rat, smell the coffee, as they would say, and try to think for yourselves, and don't allow people to just join the crowd of people like the Lion Champions who goes, oh, you're not thinking. Don't listen to people who are telling you that, because more than likely they're the ones who are brainwashed. You are going to find yourselves, just like during the vaccines, taking something, digesting information that you know that is going to destroy you. Okay? Thank you so much for joining. All the best to you. Ciao.